We are back. We are live. We are in color. How many of you thought we'd be here for game 5? Put up your hands. I don't see too many. But we are back. I'm back after my week-long trip south of the border. Yes, I made it back okay. No quarantine. No Doug Maclean quarantine stories for the next 14 days, folks. Left that all for Mac all season long. All right, let's bring him in right now. Doug Maclean. Mac, you were moonlighting on me earlier today on the NHL Network. I did happen to catch a portion of that interview, and it took you, Mac, all but 7 seconds to drop in a jet ski reference. Not an RV, but a jet ski reference with our good buddy Gord Stellick on the NHL Network.
Well, I try when I do these damn interviews, I try to do it so it doesn't affect my day. So what I did is I had to bring the jet ski in to get it serviced this morning. So I timed it so just as I got in the truck to go in town, I did the interview. So it didn't, and I knew it was going to be 20 minutes to the jet ski dealership. So that's when I did the interview. So it doesn't affect the rest of my day, you see? So that's how I work things,
And unlike this show, that one has a different feel to it, the NHL Network. For no other reason, Mac, it's also a show to promote the game. It's owned by the NHL. You can't go on that show and rip the Vegas Golden Knights like you did, Mac. You're in big trouble.
If that show's to promote the NHL, they should stop having me on once a month.
And it's not your fault. You didn't go on there with an agenda either.
No, but Stellick, unlike most of the people that go on, I'm not trying to get a job. So I don't give a rat's ass.
You got a job right here with me.
Yeah, exactly.
And to be fair to you, which I am often on this show, although you would never admit it, Gord Stellick led you down a path where there is a little bit of a sensitivity issue. Of course, this is around Gerard Gallant and his exit out of Vegas and what's transpired. So Gord did kind of lead you down that path in terms of your good buddy Gerard.
Yes, he did. Which just that's why he hosts the show, because he's a professional broadcaster.
God, I was actually okay with all of that, and then you brought up the T word, Mac, tampering on the NHL Network. You brought up a word that Gary Bettman would hate hearing.
I forgot about that. That's
what was
right.
The reference
I did.
To? Was it Pietrangelo?
I just said that Vegas had become arrogant, and it started with their owner talking Stanley Cup before he picked his first player, and and then they said. I said, look, there was a lot of teams that weren't happy with Vegas. There was a lot of conversation. You heard it, and I heard it over the Pietrangelo signing.
All right.
A lot of people felt there was tampering going on, but it wasn't proven. It never is proven. It never, unless it's Lou Lamoriello in St. Louis. But anyway,
we may revisit a little bit of this and a lot going on behind the scenes, Mac, in the National Hockey League, and we'll come full circle and talk about a few of those things. Maybe we'll even revisit on where Vegas goes here again. It sounds like a broken record, but is it possible that they could start the season next year with Robin Lehner and Marc-Andre Fleury? We'll discuss later on in the show, but why we're here, Mac, Game 5. And I started off the show. How many of you thought that we'd be here talking about a Game 5 and not recapping?
Didn't I pick Montreal to win?
Yeah, but you weren't very confident.
That was last series. That was last series, yeah.
You weren't very confident. But first of all, Mac, on our pre game 4 show, the one thing that we did emphasize, at least I did, and I think you wholeheartedly agreed, was how important it was that Montreal would not go quietly here, and how much would they have lost on the momentum that they've built the last month and a half, month and 3/4. And they delivered, Mac. In game 4, they did what they needed to do, and even if they were to lose tonight, that did show a lot out of the Montreal Canadiens, what we saw
Well,
in game 4.
I'll tell you what it showed to me is how valuable Shea Weber is to this team. I mean, this guy was a beast from the opening faceoff till the end of the game, including they were not scoring when he's in the penalty box because the Montreal players would be scared to death of having to face him in the dressing room after. And you talked about this on the show earlier. When certain guys take a penalty, the guys on the bench say, we got to kill it for Shea Weber. Well, they did. And Pat, obviously Price was a key part of that. But this guy played like a beast. Sherratt, Petrie, Edmondson. How many guys did he go after in the game? I mean, I'm watching these guys thinking, these guys do not want to go home. So that big 4, Kulak comes in, does a good job. Romanoff scores, plays a good role. Look, they played like beasts, okay? Full marks to them. And full marks to Dominic Ducharme for the changes he put in place because they worked.
I think when you look at the style of play that we've seen out of the Montreal Canadiens, it was exactly what we saw in game 4, that they're not going to outchance you. They just need to find a way to get a bounce. They need some puck luck. And they were able to win game 4, Mac, like they've been able to win in the last month and a half.
Big time. And,
can they do it again? Is there enough of a recipe there to win tonight to extend this in game 6?
You would think there isn't. But you know what? Momentum is a funny thing, and they got a little bit of it back. The coach is back. Luke did a fabulous job, but it took the head coach to come back to make those big changes and tough changes. Who would believe that Evans would go into the lineup and play the way he played? Who would believe that?
Just under 18 minutes, I think, for
right.
Evans.
I mean,
good energy, time. Good minutes.
But you know what? And more importantly, the adjusting of the lines. I mean, putting Anderson with Suzuki and Caulfield, putting Danault with Toffoli, the veteran, who's good defensively, and Gallagher, and Evans goes with Byron and Luukkonen, which is a solid third line. And then you've got the veteran fourth line. I mean, I got to tell you, those were real intelligent, sharp moves. And we talked about making changes prior to the game with Romanoff is who we talked about. But for him to do and then to juggle the lines and have them perform the way, he gave the team a lift with these changes. And I'll tell you what, when you're on the bench and you're a coach and you're a player, when a coach makes changes and you see a result, it makes you feel really good about your coach. It's like in-game. When you do an in-game change on a system or an in-game change on a matchup or an in-game change of some degree and it works, the energy level of your team rises. That's what good coaches have a knack of doing.
What did you think?
I like the moves, and I hadn't anticipated them prior to the game. And to me, they were real solid moves.
It's very seldom that you can have a start like they had in game 4 and think that you're going to be happy with the end results. But Mac, it didn't look very promising. Tampa Bay came out swinging, and they had some excellent opportunities, and Carey Price was there to shut the door. But with a full capacity crowd at home and the mayor behind you planning this whole thing out, I would suggest that Montreal would get off to a better start. How about that mayor calling on the Montreal Canadiens to win Game 4, just so she can get a 5th game and get the Tampa Bay economy going with the sellout and hot dog stands and parking. Mac, is that what her plan is all about?
As I said, and very eloquently, by the way, I said it. Tom Brady almost threw the Super Bowl trophy in the drink when he was on the boat. She may be the next one going in the drink if they lose tonight. I mean, they put a life preserver on her, obviously, but they might dunk her.
I think her name's Jane Castor. I suggest that we call this now the Castor curse.
Could we get some odds on re-election if the Habs pull through? I would say very, very low.
Jordan, she's done. If they lose tonight, she is going to not sleep very well.
And she said she was just joking. Well,
yeah,
there's a time to say you're just joking, and there's a time just, well, you know what? That's the thing. We have to, as professionals, you and I, we have to be careful what we say.
Constantly.
Yeah, constantly.
Just prior to puck drop, I put out a tweet that said that I don't think it's been talked enough on how physically the Tampa Bay Lightning are hurting, and Kucherov came to the top of my list. Mac, nothing's confirmed, but the word I'm getting from a few is that he could be playing with a cracked rib from the cross-check earlier in the playoffs. And then there's Stamkos, some suggesting he's playing on one leg. And it's so important that Montreal comes out here and pounds them, which you have just mentioned that they did. And, oh, by the way, you mentioned it on the NHL Network. You didn't credit me at all on the effect of how hurting Tampa Bay may be. But this may be an edge for Montreal here going into tonight, that they may feel like they got them on the ropes a little bit here. And if they can keep pounding them, Mac, maybe, just maybe, this thing can swing.
I asked somebody this morning if about Kucherov, and they said, Doug, let me tell you about Kucherov. You think Ovechkin's tough? This kid is Ovechkin type, has Ovechkin type toughness. Wow. And he's vicious, and he's got bite. And we've seen him. He does not shy away, this guy, but it depends on injury. I'll tell you another thing, Nick. And by the way, I just want you to know, when I'm on the big shows, I only promote myself. And I promote myself in a way that I hope they don't ask me back. That's how I promote myself. My goal when I just got a call to do a goddamn show in Wisconsin Friday at 6:30, just as you're ready to sit down and have dinner, either in a restaurant or whatever. And my goal going on that show Friday is to never be invited back again. I've been successful on a lot of them, by the way.
If your goal this morning was to never be on Darren Millard's Vegas show, mission accomplished.
I know, for sure, right? For sure. Anyway,
just speaking on Kucherov, Mac, 30-plus points, 2 consecutive years, only Gretzky and Lemieux.
Oh, yeah.
We've had a conversation about Point now going down as one of the better players in history around the playoffs. But how can you not mention this guy?
Oh, I know.
And what he's done to really take Tampa Bay to a level that I didn't think that they'd ever get. But we're talking about one of the best players, this time of year in history.
Yep. And you know what? He has got some bite to his game. We saw him. He's no shrinking violet, this guy. This guy will fight back, fight through, go to the net, go to the tough areas. He does it all. And I'll tell you, if he's 50 or 60%, I don't know what he is. I'll tell you who they're going to miss tonight is Killorn. This guy is a very, very important hockey player on this team. On that line with Stamkos, who doesn't look like he's 100% unless he's on the power play. Cirelli, By the way, somebody told me today after they listened to me on the NHL Network, say it's not Joe Cirella. How do you pronounce it? Joe Cirella does
Joe
not
Cirella. Mac, Joe Cirella was a first rounder to New Jersey in the 80s.
Joe Cirella was my assistant coach in Florida.
You've got Anthony Cirelli. That's who you got to remember.
Exactly. But I'll tell you what, Killorn makes that line go. He is a very, very underrated guy in this hockey team. And the fact that he won't play tonight, that's a big loss. That's a big loss for them. So, you know what? We'll see. We'll see how it goes tonight. But you know what? Hey, if Montreal win tonight, Game 7.
I can't argue that. I think there'll be a complete mindset that would put them in a position to go to Game 7, and think about the confidence that Carey Price will have had at that point,
but
especially into Game 6.
And Montreal need a few things to happen. Obviously, they've got to play the same way because Tampa Bay is going to come after you. And the thing is, Tampa Bay 2 for 12 on the power play, and not scoring on that 4-minute power play with Weber out from the end of the game to overtime. That has got to play a little bit into their heads. Can Montreal's penalty killing keep the power play off the board? That is the big question. And Cooper said the only thing I would say we should do differently is not hit the post as many times as we did.
Three in each period by their top players of Point, Kucherov, and Hedman, Mac.
Yeah.
And they weren't cheating posts. They weren't the side of the posts.
No,
they were ding
on.
Bang on. And Kucherov had the game-winning goal on his stick with less than 5 minutes to go, and this thing hits square on the post. Factor in the bad start by Montreal, and we're talking some serious puck luck. And it's hard. It's hard in the regular season to win 4 games in a row, let alone a Stanley Cup final here. But when I watch Tampa Bay lose that game, and yet so many stand out still, and I'm watching late in the third period, Patrick Maroon. The mere fact that he's out on the ice, Mac, is one thing, but to make score that play. A goal,
exactly.
And Joseph comes in
with 2 minutes left. With 2 minutes left in the game, a little over 2 minutes left.
Joseph comes in for Killorn and makes a spectacular pass to Maroon.
I know.
And then you've got constant threats from Gord, Coleman, and Goudreau. Tyler Johnson earlier in the series lighting it up. Like the firepower that Montreal has got to avoid again.
I know. It's over the top.
Lineup. What
it's
a
over
task.
The top. It is. And that's gonna, they've gotta play, got back to that type of play the last game. I know they still needed a ton of luck. And I know they needed Price to make some unbelievable saves. And you need all that. You need all that because they're not even close to as good a team. I'm sorry, they're not. This team has the best. We talked about it before the series. They have the best forwards in the league. They have the best defense in the league. And they have the best goaltending in the league. And the best power play in the league. This is a team that is well constructed. And for Montreal, look, full marks to them. But to me, it's got to be system and it's got to be beast mode. But it's got to be beast mode to beat them. But you got to make sure you don't take too many penalties.
That's still maybe 2 out of 4. Can Montreal go in and extend this thing if Toffoli or Gallagher don't score? Does it have to be Suzuki, Cole Caulfield, and Anderson who carry the mail here?
Well, you know what? I don't think Toffoli and Gallagher have to score, but Toffoli and Gallagher and Danault have got to do an unbelievable job of shutting down the big boys on Tampa. And he's got to get them out there on the ice. Not the last change. They've got to, the head coach has got to get them on the ice. I don't care if you have to change on the fly. You got to do it. You got to get them out there to have a chance. So, you know what? No, they probably don't have to score because Luukkonen has scored. Caulfield has scored. Anderson scored. Byron has scored in the playoffs. Evans made a big play. I'll tell you who has impressed me in this series, Nick, that we never talk about is Joel Armia. How good a player has this guy become?
You know, and again, if I'm a Winnipeg Jet fan, it's bad enough I got to watch Ben Sherratt turn into a legit, 2-3. He'll never be a number one, but he can play. He can play with any of the top players in the game on the blue line. And then you watch Armia, who's just this big body, and on some nights can play 15 minutes. On other nights, probably 10 or 11. But penalty kill and just be noticeable when he's on the ice and have a flair for scoring a goal.
This is a guy that was a first-round pick out of Finland, great player in the World Junior. And it's what we've talked about so many times in this show, and which I think general managers are starting to think about, is we need some players that can play at this time of year. And Joel Armia has shown me he is a player that can play this time of year. He might get 10, 12 goals in the regular season. He may get 15, but he plays this time of year. And he plays the same way every night. And he's not a fun guy to play against. And he's got two perfect line mates with him right now. We haven't talked about him in this show, but I got to tell you, Nick, this guy has been really impressive.
Yeah.
He's Buffalo, Winnipeg, Montreal. 6'3", 215 pounds.
Yeah. He's a big man.
Yep.
He's a big man, takes a lot of space.
Yep.
All right, Mac, before we move on to maybe a couple other topics, now, this is your head or your heart, but is this thing over tonight?
There's a very good chance it'll be over tonight, but I'm going into it cheering for Montreal.
We want more.
I'm going into it cheering for Montreal. You know what? I've cheered for Montreal a lot. You know what? I get a kick out of it. I'm talking to Boston people in Boston this morning, doing my show prep. Not for the NHL Network, of course, but for this show. There's a lot of chatter in these organizations all of a sudden about who's going to make the playoffs next year in this division. When you got Tampa, Boston, Toronto, Montreal, and an improved Ottawa team, who is going to miss? And if 5 teams make it in one side, then only 3 may make it in this division.
Yeah, with the wild card.
Who is going to miss? And if I'm a general manager in this division, I guess what's it called? The Atlantic or something? I don't know. Whatever it's called.
The Atlantic and the Metro are in the East.
So, you know what? Making the playoffs next year, there's going to be some pissed off fans next year because you've got some improved teams and you've got, look who's going to be better. Look who's going to be better.
Well,
what about
Florida?
Me. What about Florida? What about Tampa? What about Ottawa challenging Boston, Toronto, and the big boys? It's going to be interesting.
Kind of brings me to our next topic, and that is, of course, what's going on behind the scenes. While it remains relatively quiet, Mac, there just seems to be some either fact-finding missions by certain teams or just educating themselves on what is going to transpire. We're under 2 weeks to the Seattle expansion draft. And while things seem relatively quiet, with the exception of David Poile and moving Arvidsson to LA for 2 picks, it just seems like we're going to see a little bit more of that. 4 years ago when it was about the expansion draft, it was dealing with George McPhee. It looks like other general managers going around Ron Francis now, like David Poyle did. And instead of losing a top player for nothing, they're going to lose them in a trade and still bring back assets.
That's the big challenge. Like I don't know how many times we've talked about it, and Vegas. People, I don't know if they weren't prepared. I don't know if George caught them off guard. I don't know if George was tougher than they expected him to be, but they did a hell of a job in the expansion draft. And Ronnie is going to be in tougher. He's going to be in tougher. It's going to be a lot more challenging. And I said it to you the other day, like, I want to know who their goaltender is going to be. Who is the Seattle goaltender going to be that is going to be the most important player on that team next year? And that's a big question in Seattle right now. Who is going to be our goalie? Do we have to go free agency? Is there going to be somebody available?
Isn't that what you did? You went through this whole process in the early 2000s. What year was your expansion draft?
2000. So what we did prior is I signed Tugnutt as an unrestricted free agent, and I made a trade for Mark Danault. So I had both those deals done going into the expansion draft. So I ended up I took Tabaracci, I took a couple other guys as wasted picks because I knew I had Tugnutt and Mark Danault signed or deals done on them. So, you know what, you have, that's the thing to me is the number one thing in Seattle is where does this go with the goaltending? Because we know how important it was for Vegas. Coaching, we saw Haxel get the job. I've been told that he was the guy that Ron Francis wanted, that Gerard Gallant wasn't really in the mix, and that Haxel was the guy. And then I see yesterday hires a couple more assistant coaches. McFarland, where was he? He was in Toronto. Then he was back in Kingston, but Kingston didn't play. So he's one of the assistant coaches. I mean,
isn't that? I don't see this very often. Maybe you have at a managerial, but McFarland, of course, last season with Toronto and Haxel. So you see where it's going, but in between, he signed, I'm told, a 5-year deal. And that's unconfirmed, but he was committed almost 5 years, is my understanding, to go coach and general manage in Kingston, and bails on it, essentially.
Before he coached one game.
Wouldn't you be pissed off if you're Kingston right now?
Well, if you paid him all year, you certainly would be.
Well, I don't know what the money situation is, but I don't know. I mean, it's just very seldom you see a guy jump from team to team so quickly.
That one really caught me off guard. I thought with Haxel going in there, I thought he'd be looking for a real experienced assistant coach. I really did. I was caught off guard by both those signings yesterday. I mean, I know, the guy in Providence, Leach, is, he's got a good reputation, but I mean, he's never coached in the NHL. I know he's been around the Bruins a lot in training camp, but I was caught off guard by both those hires, and I don't know. I
just want to go back to the goaltending situation, Mac, that you had just spoken moments ago about Seattle. 2 unrestricted free agent goaltenders, Frederik Andersen. Some rumblings that the Leafs are kicking tires to see what it would cost. At this point, if you don't know, then shame on you. But weren't these discussions that should have been done months ago, Mac? Or you don't do that until you have to do that?
Well, like I've said it on some shows recently, and I've said it, I think, on this one. Like you have Stanley Cup aspirations, and you've got a guy that's played six NHL playoff games in Jack Campbell, and I know he had a great run, and I know he had a great run of 11 games, and he wasn't bad in the playoffs. He didn't cost somebody. He let in some shaky goals still.
No.
And how do you think you're going to be a Stanley Cup contender when there's that much of a question mark in the number one position?
It wasn't a shaky goal. According to him, it was the worst goal in his career that he gave
Right.
up. And
So
I don't know about wanting to name this guy our number one goaltender on what we think is a contending team for a Stanley Cup when he calls the worst goal of his career in the biggest game of his career.
and yet, when you're watching games now every night, like the GMs are doing, do you not see that even as good as Tampa Bay is, Vasilevsky may have to be their MVP to win this? Price, as good as he can be, Varlamov at the Islanders kept them in it at times. I mean, every series is critical that your goaltender is world class.
Yeah.
And they're sitting there saying, we're giving the job to Jack Campbell. Good grief. Anyway.
The feeling now, Mac, is with the Leafs with Frederik Andersen and Colorado with Grubauer, is they believe that they're worth a certain amount of money. And I would think for both of those guys, it would be $5 million and above. So I got to think now Colorado and Toronto are telling both these respective goaltenders, go out there. If you can find it, go find it. If you can't, come back to us.
I think I'd be looking after myself first and trying to say, okay, do I want Grubauer to be my goaltender? Do I want Freddie Andersen to be my goaltender, or have him? And I wouldn't be saying go look and then come back. I would be saying this is the deal we can give you.
Okay.
Why are you telling people if you don't, unless I mean, if I'm Dubas, I wouldn't be too cocky about my goaltending right now, let me tell you. And if I'm Joe Sakic, because I'm not sure who's out there.
There's a difference between Colorado and Toronto right now, is that Joe Sakic wants Grubauer as their number one goalie. They want him back. But there's a price. Joe's not the type of guy to throw a lot of dollars if he doesn't have to.
No, and Joe also wants to be in the Seth Jones sweepstake here. Let's not kid ourselves. You talked about that on the show a week ago, that Seth Jones is Chicago, Colorado, I don't know where else, but those are two legitimate ones. You got Eric Johnson injured. Yeah. Can they move that deal? Can they move that contract?
Yeah.
Chicago, can they move Keith money? Can they make this happen? So, you know what? He's got to know his goaltending number, and I'm sure Joe does.
But for Seattle, Mac, signing Frederik Andersen or Grubauer would be a great start for them. And argue all you want about Andersen. Sure, argue all you want about Andersen can't win in the playoffs. Go ahead. But I know he can help you get there.
I agree with that, but he's not going to. Their goaltending, in all likelihood, is not going to be close to what Vegas got in their first couple of years of goaltending. That's what I'm saying. And look, whether George McPhee and Kelly McCrimmon did the greatest job in the history of expansion franchises or not, Fleury had to win a lot of games for that hockey team the first couple of years. Yeah. He had to win a lot of games. So, you know what? Even the genius of George and Kelly, they needed this goaltender, to help them win.
The other thing that Ron Francis is finding out, and if he really did his homework, he'd find out it's still an issue with Vegas, is there's no centerman out there, Mac.
You want to believe it.
It is so hard right now. Ron Francis is having a disaster of a time finding centermen for his team next year. And if you look at Vegas
I agree.
And how they've been able to contend, get to a final, and yet today we look at William Karlsson and Chandler Stevenson. The number one reason why Vegas is on the outside looking in right now is because they were inadequate down the middle of the ice.
Well, and guess what? The Suzuki trade and the lack of development for Cody Glass has cost that team big time. Suzuki for Pacioretty. I know Pacioretty scored. I'm sorry. That is a horrendous trade right now when you look at it. That is a horrendous trade. Suzuki is going to be a player for the next 12, 15 years. And the
And a
fact
centerman.
that Cody Glass
And a top centerman, Mac.
And the fact that Cody Glass has had a stalled development for whatever reason, I've got mixed vibes on this one, that they don't like him. He doesn't, whatever the case is, he hasn't been an NHL player for them. And those two players, and it's easy for us to say after the fact about Pacioretty deal, you didn't like it when it was made, but they wanted him, and you know what?
They're built.
He's played pretty well, and they wanted to win right away. Fair enough. I'm not going to rip them for the Pacioretty trade, but what I'm saying is, without Suzuki and Cody Glass, that makes that center ice even a bigger problem.
Well, and as we get into unrestricted free agency, it's not there's no stars out there, Mac. Philip Danault may be the biggest one out there, and we know he's not a goal scorer, but he's proven, Mac, that you can be successful, and you could possibly make $5 or $6 million if you can shut down Austin Matthews, Mark Scheifele, Mark Stone.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Where does Montreal go with Philip Danault?
Well, that's they've got to try to re-sign Danault for how valuable he's been. And I know he hasn't scored, once in the playoffs and very few in the regular season. I think he had 5 goals in the regular season. Am I wrong? 5 goals.
Mac, he couldn't score in a soccer net.
I know. And you know what? But you also have to understand that who these guys play against on a nightly basis, and who their wingers are, and who they're going head to head with. Everybody talks to me about, you love Sean Crowley. Sean Crowley had 1 less goal than Philip Danault, 57% in over 400 faceoffs taken, and in the regular season, 80% of his offensive starts start in the defensive zone. Because every time they get a whistle in the offensive zone, out comes Bergeron, Krejci, and I don't blame the coaches for that. And 90% defensive zone starts in the playoffs with 200 hits, more than Danault, more than Suzuki. So, and go head to head against the other team's best players. Those types of guys are valuable. So, Danault, if Montreal do not sign Danault, they're out of their minds.
Well,
I don't give a shit if he gets 6 goals next year. They've got to get Danault signed.
Or they don't spend that money and they go spend it on Sean Crowley or Cizikas.
No, I mean that's the option, and I teams are looking for those guys. I watch Crowley and I watch Cizikas, and I watch them go head to head against Ovechkin. I watch them go head to head against Malkin. Watch them go head to head against McDavid. Those are the type of guys this time of year you need. So it will be fun to see where it shakes out. Well, we saw the loss of a Kadri.
Yeah.
The loss of a Kadri in Colorado was a devastating loss. And they're not, and you said it, Nick, they're gonna try to keep them because they can't afford to lose them. Because center ice costs them the series as well, The
feeling was that Montreal made an offer of 5 years over $5 million. The Pajot contract was offered to Danault, and he turned it down, Mac. Now that they're in a final going into Game 5, I think Danault feels pretty good about turning down that deal.
Well, I got to believe Danault wants to be in Montreal, and I will be shocked if they don't get him done. I really do. I don't care if he gets 5 goals next year or 7 goals. If he does in the regular season against Matthews and some of these guys, which you know how important these type of players are going to be to teams next year in the Atlantic just to make the playoffs. Just to make the playoffs, they're going to need playoff type players to be successful to get to the playoffs. That's how tough it's going to be.
Are you okay at $5.5 million, $27 million over 5 years? 5.5 a year.
If I'm Bergevin coming off a Stanley Cup final performance, I ain't too worried about my future now. All of a sudden, he feels pretty good. All of a sudden, he can have the odd bad deal. Hey, 8 months ago, he couldn't afford a bad deal. Now he can afford a bad deal. So I I just know they need him. They need him. So it'll be interesting to see what he gets.
You brought up the name Seth Jones. No question where Chicago, the Blackhawks are thinking. Unload Duncan Keith's 5+ contract and bring in Caleb Jones, brother of Seth Jones, put them together. It worked for Brian Burke in Anaheim. It can work for us in Chicago.
Look, if it helps get Seth, I'm making the trade.
You failed at it, didn't you?
I failed at it. Yes, I did.
Tell everybody about.
Well, Craig Button was the GM, and I said I offered Sillinger for Robbie Niedermeyer, and Craig really liked Sillinger. Everybody liked Mike Sillinger at the time. Mike Sillinger was a guy that did his job, third line guy, penalty killer, could play up in the lineup, down the lineup. I love Mike Sillinger.
And you wanted Robbie, not because you thought Robbie was great, but Robbie could do something.
Well, I had a relationship with Robbie from Florida, and I love the guy. And I wanted him, and and you know what? It didn't happen. Berkey got him, and I remember
Berkey didn't trade with Button.
No, yeah,
free agent.
No. Well, they traded him. Where did he end up? No, he got Scott as a thing, but didn't he? He traded for Robbie, didn't he?
I thought he signed him as a free agent.
I think he traded for Robbie.
Okay.
I think he traded for Robbie
Jordan,
and signed Scott. But then after the fact, I heard rumblings that Scott Niedermeyer would have been open to coming to Columbus, and I'm thinking, are you shitting me? Are you shitting me? Anyway.
Would that have been to the Ducks in 2003 or 2001? Yeah. So the Ducks acquired Rob Niedermeyer in exchange for Mike Commodore and Jean-Francois Damafos. Sorry for that pronunciation.
There's the deal. That's the deal that beat me. And Craig was great. I mean, we talked a lot. I thought I had it. I thought I was close to getting it done. I really did. But anyway, that's what happened.
So Rob Niedermeyer signed as a restricted free agent. I think the same time that his brother signed as an unrestricted free agent.
Yeah, so probably his contract was expiring.
Yes, 4-year.
But it was a trade. Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
So anyway, that's what happens.
It gave Brian Burke his Stanley Cup.
Well, I'm glad for Berkey. I'm glad for Berkey. I'm glad I was able to help him out. I helped him more than that. I gave him Beauchemin and Todd Marchand in the Fedorov deal. So I helped him more than that. I deserve a Stanley Cup ring more than Millard does in Vegas.
We'll see.
But it was good for Berkey. It was good that Berkey, it gives Berkey another chance. Got Berkey I didn't get him the Toronto job. He campaigned hard for that one himself. But, it may have helped get him the Pittsburgh one, so it's good for Berkey.
If giving up Jones in Edmonton is the only thing keeping you from getting Duncan Keith, do it tomorrow, Mac. It's a no-brainer here. Duncan Keith wants to come to Edmonton to be closer to his family out west. At the end of the day, there's not still a lot of players wanting to go to Edmonton. You got a Hall of Famer here and a proven leader who still got the game, Mac. He's 38. He's going to be 38, but he's still got some juice.
The only downside is the cap dollars. The downside is how much tighter does it, and then all of a sudden they have to buy out Neil or have to buy out whoever.
Neil's going to get bought out.
I just think he's going to be bought out. But I think the character of a Keith with this group is a real plus. I really do. I'm with you on this. Is his play going to be bad in a couple of years? What's he got? 2 years left?
I think he does have 2 years left.
And with the way he can skate, and the way he thinks the game, and the way he is as a person, I agree with you. I think it's a good deal to make. I think it's a good deal.
I think you got a race right now to get this deal done.
I don't know how many calls Stan Bowman's taking right now, but hopefully he takes that one and gets it done.
The other thing I'm hearing, Mac, is that Vancouver's trying to move Nate Schmidt out to move in Oliver Ekman-Larsson in Arizona.
Yeah, that doesn't. I mean, we knew Ekman-Larsson was the name they pursued last summer. I would like to see Ekman-Larsson go somewhere because I've heard. I remember people telling me 5-7 years ago he was going to be a Norris Trophy winner. Okay, and I remember talking about that on Hockey Central at noon, and people saying, "Are you crazy?" And you know what? He has not shown me anywhere close to what he should have. His career to this point, compared to where he should have been, is not even close for me. And I know maybe I don't see him enough in Arizona, or maybe it's because of the team or the atmosphere, but he better be a lot better player than what I've seen. And he's capable of it. We know that. And we know Vancouver wanted him. We know Boston wanted him. Boston's another team that their defense is not good enough maybe to make the playoffs next year. I hear they're close to getting Hull done. Did you tell me that this morning?
Hull really wants to be there. They want him back.
Yeah.
Hull's going to be in that Ovechkin nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Get through the expansion. Don't waste a protection on Taylor Hall
and we'll get them done.
OV. Yeah, and then announce those signings after.
Yeah, and you know what? But their blue line is not good enough. I mean, McAvoy, Carlo, Rob, and they're going to lose. They may lose somebody in the expansion draft. I don't know if they will or not.
They can't. But they can't fit 8.25.
No, they can't.
And what would happen, Mac, is that they definitely. I don't think they'd be interested in Charlie Coyle's 5-year deal left at 5.25. Outside of that, I'm not sure it makes a lot of sense to move a guy, and I'm sure Arizona would gladly take DeBrusk because he's there's not a long commitment for him. He's got another year at 3.6. That would make sense for them.
And they don't want, for whatever reason, they do not want DeBrusk on their team. They do not want him, and I'm kind of lost on that one. I don't know how it soured so badly there. I had heard rumblings that there was a 5-year deal in the $5 million range that was offered, and then it was taken off the table. I don't know if there's bitterness or whatever happened. I don't know how accurate that is, but you know what? To me, Jake DeBrusk is a good gamble for somebody. I really think he is.
A lot like Corrali. He shows up in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. Big time. So, you know what?
And what is he, 24 years of age?
Yeah, young guy. And
young guy.
I would have thought I thought he'd be a great fit in Edmonton because of his dad and, but I don't know.
I mean, this guy's got 15, 20 career playoff goals already.
Oh, I know.
He's not even 25 years
like him
of age.
So hopefully something happens there. But Boston's a team right now that when you look at this division next year with the way Montreal have played some of these, they're going to be in tough. They're going to be in tough. So we'll see.
It's sounding like there's a real good shot that Krejci and Tuukka Rask come back as well.
Yeah.
And why wouldn't you, Mac? You got Bergeron on for another year. You got Pasternak for 2 more years and Marchand for 4 more years at 6-1. You're going to get another chance to compete here.
Yeah, and that if they get that and add a couple of blue liners, you know what, they have a chance. You know, they're going to be right in the mix again. So they'll pick away at it, and they're anyway, who knows?
Now, Tuukka Rask has got off-season surgery. I guess they're mentioning maybe January coming back, February.
And they got the kid from University of Maine who's
been great.
Come in and gave them some great games this year down the stretch, so they feel okay there. So, that's one thing. It comes back to another inexperienced guy when you're trying to make the playoffs. That's the problem. You have no idea.
Jeremy Swayman has put himself in a position to be the #1 goaltender of the future.
Yeah.
Do you think Tuukka Rask, with his surgery and not coming back till maybe January or February, would be eligible for the Tampa Bay program
Uh,
of
yeah.
waiting out the season or close to it?
He can't wait out the season, Tuukka. He'd have to get in there somebody, but it'll be fun to see how many teams.
Well,
I'm glad I didn't bring that up
take
on
Tuukka.
NHL. I'm glad I didn't bring that up on the PR show today.
They could take Tuukka at least to the trade deadline, where roster moves are really important.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Well, all right. Anything else out there tickle your fancy?
No,
Eichel?
I'm gonna. I don't care about Eichel. I'm sick of Eichel. I'm sick of Buffalo. I'm really sick of Buffalo. Seriously.
Stay with it. Stay with it. So much talk about how many pieces Kevin Adams. I'm going there anyways with you, whether you like it or not. But so many talk about what his wish list is. But when this thing's all said and done, Mac, could it be as simple as Anaheim offering the 3rd pick overall and maybe Trevor Zegras?
Well,
is that enough? Is that enough? A top centerman and the 3rd pick overall, a top prospect centerman.
Well, it all comes back to what other offers you have. What other really legitimate offers do you have for Eichel? I mean, we know how good he is. We know how young he is. We know what his contract is. But
if I offered you Trevor Zegras and the 3rd pick overall, do you take it, or do you bring him back to training camp or or whenever he's ready after surgery?
I would be looking long and hard at that deal, long and hard, and maybe trying to get another piece out of it. But I mean, Buffalo have got to cut their losses here, and you still have to get great assets back, because this is the most critical move for the Buffalo Sabres that's going to happen to this franchise for the next 10 years. They got to come up with assets when Eichel leaves, or they're going to be a bottom feeder for a long time. Well, and it's a big challenge for Kevin. There's big challenge.
Drysdale as well out there, but
right
as we had just talked earlier in the program about centers being at a premium, I think it'd be hard to move Eichel out without getting a centerpiece back, or at least a prospect of one.
No, it's you gotta fight tooth and nail to maximize this deal. The Stahl deal was a soft deal because it was, the Hall deal was sort of a soft deal. I mean, when Foligno brings more assets than Taylor Hall brings, like, are you shitting me?
Well, like I said, center will be a premium position. We know your love for Sean Kuraly. I'm telling you, Mac, Sean Kuraly could do very well when it comes to unrestricted free agency. I think he's north of $12 million over 4 years. I think those type of guys now will command $3 million, 3+. Toronto.
Well, if you're watching,
the Leafs are all over Kuraly.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you?
I mean,
he squashed you the last few years.
I said last week on this show that every year, all we talk about is the third line of this team and the third line of that team. And look how good the third line has been. And look, if you get a guy like, Danault plays 16 and a half minutes, Kuraly plays 14 minutes. That's what he averaged, over 14 minutes a game. Yeah. So, we talk about them every year. Gord, how important is the Gord line? How important is this line? When you won the Stanley Cup, how important was your third line?
How about Tyler Johnson now on the fourth line, making $5 million?
I know. Well, they've got $100 million cap and they're allowed that. Is that because of taxes? Because of no taxes, or is that no? That's that's right. Because the guy missed all year, right? I was
Good
wondering
on
what
Hamilton to point it out that they've got a 90. What did he say? A $96 million salary cap.
Everybody has told me for as long as Hamilton's been in the league that he's a genius. Well, it didn't take being a genius to figure. That's called adding and subtracting. You know, that's like a kid was shadowing me when I was a GM and president. And he said to me, he was sitting interviewing me for his school project. And he said, "How important is math to this job as a GM and president?" And I said, "Well, here's what you need to know to be a GM. You have to know how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide, and do percentages. And after that, I take it up to the CFO and get him to do the rest." So that's the answer.
Well,
Hamilton's smart guy.
He's a smart guy, and we're going to see how smart he is with his negotiations. I heard he turned down $7 million out of Carolina. Ouch. I got to assume, Mac, there's more for him on an AAV than $7 million outside of Carolina.
Yeah, he'd be a hot commodity. I mean, if you're Seattle, are you not taking a run at this guy?
Yeah. You want to do that?
Why not?
How far
why
are you
not?
from Stanley Cup in your prime years?
I don't know. Sometimes if you've got $50 million in the bank, you can watch the Stanley Cup
on a giant screen.
Exactly.
All right. How are you feeling, by the way? I know it's coming and going a little bit, the vertigo, but hell of an effort here the last hour.
Well, I played 18 holes the other day. I was going to go and play 9, and then I had a 41 after 9. So I shit, I can't quit now. I got to play the back. I ended with an 85 or something, then yesterday it hit me again. I was dizzy all day, so I'm not great today, but I'm not bad. But it's been 3 weeks of this bullshit. You know, I need some doctors. If there's any doctors listening, besides the Epley maneuver and acupuncture, can somebody phone and send me a note as to what I should do? One guy sent a real positive note the other day after the show. He said, "Doug, make sure beware of blood clots because of I've been vaccinated." I said, "Holy shit, that's the last thing I need to hear."
So you mentioned going into Game 4 that you were golfing, and if you're going to shoot a 50, that would be equivalent to Montreal losing. What do the Canadiens need to shoot in the front 9 to beat Tampa Bay tonight? Like, would your 41 get them a Game 5 win?
No, you know what? They would have to have my all-time best on 9 holes, which is a 38.
Wow, that's got Carey Price shutout written all over.
But that was like one time, and it was kind of fluky.
That's all Canadian fans want, Mac, is a one-time fluke Game 5 win.
Montreal will take my fluky as hell 38.
Well, we'll find out soon enough tonight. Great effort, Mac. Appreciate you coming on the show, and we'll see if we can continue this thing. If Montreal does what you think it could do tonight, we're back here discussing Game 6 on Friday.
I'd hate for this show to go away.
Yeah, we're just warming up again. I'm back home. It's all good.
It's great. It's great. Okay. Right. Have fun.
Jordan, we good? Max good?
Yeah,
everybody's
good to go,
happy. Bro. Any questions for Mac before you let him go, Jordan?
I've been thinking about one thing, actually, to be honest. What's the downside for teams going after more of these playoff-ready players? What do you think could possibly happen during the regular season if you don't have those horses to really eat those minutes? Or do you bring up people from the AHL? How do you really approach that thing if you know that you need to save your playoff guys who might be a little long in the tooth for that late season?
This is a chicken. What comes first, the chicken or the egg theory? Jordan's discussing regular season playoffs.
To me, if you have a guy that really plays in the playoffs, there's a 99% chance he's also going to compete like a madman in the regular season. So to me, it's a no loss. I mean, you need those type of players to make the playoffs, and you need those type of players to have success in the playoffs. I think it's a no-brainer.
And
we see it every year.
You out of 32 teams now with Seattle, you got to be really good to make the playoffs. And
damn right. Damn right.
Over the course of 82 games, Montreal could have missed the playoffs this year, like they did last year, only to be in this qualifying pre-tournament series, which they won.
LA Kings won 2 Stanley Cups when they could have missed the playoffs. It happens all the time. You got to make the playoffs. You need competitive guys to make the playoffs. But unless you have, like, Toronto's a little different because they got the big time superstar scorers in the regular season. It makes it a little easier. But not many teams are as rich at the top as the Leafs are for their regular season guys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Conversation for another day, but the Leafs left themselves exposed on their third and fourth lines. That's
100%.
All right, Jordan. Thanks, pal.
Thank you.
Mac, hopefully you can rest and enjoy the rest of your day. We got you off to a great start. NHL Network this morning, Real Kyper at noon now. You're good to go the rest of the day, pal. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, man.
Okay, everybody, enjoy Game 5 tonight. We'll see if this thing gets extended. Thanks for watching. First-time watcher, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button one last time for Mac before we see if there's a Game 6. Enjoy your night, everybody.